Just like these sakura trees that blossomed much too early, Green Purple Luffy came out of nowhere and took everyone by surprise. Welcome to the Green Purple Luffy anomaly and how Japan tries to stop it. My name is iKailaKai. I'm a Japanese One Piece TCG analyst, and in this video I'm going to be talking over not only the Japan finals that took place in EB02, but the EB02 meta as a whole, as it was a very short meta. I think that this meta, compared to the other metas that we've had before, is very interesting, especially for people in the West, because of how unsolved I think it still is. If you're interested in staying ahead of the meta, make sure to subscribe. Let's get into the video. I'm happy to announce that this is going to be my first ever sponsored video. This video is sponsored by OPTCG Decks, the app that lets you not only be able to create your decks, but also quickly and easily share them and look at market prices. For most of my videos, I use the official Bandai TCG Plus app to be able to create my decks. However, in this video, I'm going to be using the OPTCG Decks Deck Builder. This deck builder gives me a lot more options because not only can I easily put the market price of all of the decks that I'm going to be talking about within this video, but also thanks to the deck sharing feature, you can easily import the codes that are in the description for all of the decks that I use into OPTCG Sim or the app itself. For me, the most useful feature is being able to sort through the cards really easily. Once I have a deck open, a lot of the times I just really want to have a good 5 cost for a certain turn that I feel is weak. In that case, I can just sort by cost, go to the 5 cost section, and look through the cards that exist to find maybe some random card that I totally had forgotten for the last year and a half. If you put in my promo code KAI, K-A-I, all caps, that's my real name, then you get a free trial of the pro version of the app. I'm back at home to show you another feature that I like in the Pro version. Now I have the app on my phone right now, and you can see my Blue Purple Luffy list that I'm using currently. And one of the really nice things about this is that, first of all, I can just look at how much does my deck cost? By going into the notes and stats, I can not only look at all of the really interesting stats, such as that I'm probably going to lose against Teach because I have 26 cards with on play, I can also put in notes that I'm thinking about with the deck. Perhaps I need more 2Ks, some other cards that I feel like putting in. I think that these are sort of valuable things that I can hold on to for later, so I don't forget them when I'm on the move. So many great features are in the free version, and the pro version just helps enhance this. Supporting my sponsors also supports me, so if you want a free and easy way to be able to help support me and the people that I work with, then I'd greatly appreciate it if you try this app. Thank you to OPTCG Decks for sponsoring this video. As I'm walking to my filming location, let's quickly talk about how this deck came to be. Now, this deck really just came out of nowhere. When EB02 was coming out, many people just brushed off this leader because, like EB01, it seemed very gimmicky. Even now, things like Red, Green, Oden, Hanyabal, and Kirosu just have not seen much play in the East. Now, many people thought that Green Purple Luffy was going to just end up being the same, but it turns out that this deck got a lot of support within EB02, which is not something they did for EB01. Now, whether or not these buffs were going to be good enough for the deck, no one could really tell for sure, and there was lots of mockery even on day one when people were saying that the deck was strong, because the deck just doesn't look strong. However, people underestimated how much power the package as a whole had through things like the leader ability, the stage, and the 5-cost Sanji and Pudding. So what makes Green Purple Luffy so strong? Well, let's put it like this. It's like if Red Purple Law was balanced and made to be more like Doflamingo. It has the outstanding board spread potential as well as offensive capabilities of Red Purple Law, while also having the resource management of Blue Doflamingo. The only thing that it doesn't have is board removal. However, these benefits of the deck are more than enough to make up for the demerits of it. With very few exceptions, these are the 38 cards that you'll find in almost every single Green Purple Luffy list. And while some of the cards in this list I believe are tech cards for the things like the Mirror or the other matchups like Blue Doflamingo that you might face, I think that the core of this deck comes down to Sanji and Pudding, the stage, as well as all of the consistency cards that you have to try to find these parts. The new green 1-cost Nami is exactly the same as the 1-cost Nami all the way back in OP01. However, because it's in green, it means that it's usable by these new leaders. The strength of this deck comes from when the 5-cost Sanji and Pudding can stick to the board. When Sanji and Pudding sticks to the board, it effectively upgrades your leader ability, where your leader ability usually is -2 dong to get 2 dong active and make your leader 6,000 power, which honestly feels pretty underwhelming. Sanji and Pudding makes so that it's only -1 dong, so that you get 3 active dong and still make your leader 6,000 power. In this way, you get so much extra dong to be able to play multiple things on the board, akin to the way that Red Purple Law used to play. However, unlike Red Purple Law, who tends to function on low dong counts throughout the entire game, Green Purple Luffy can actually gain a lot of dong due to the fact that if he starts putting multiple Sanji and Pudding on the board, things get out of control. With 2 Sanji and Pudding, his leader ability basically just restands 4 dong, and when you can get to a point where this is possible, the deck is almost unstoppable. Now, obviously, the answer is to just remove Sanji and Pudding, or what if they don't find their Sanji and Pudding? While yes, these are really good answers, things like the stage that increase the cost of it make it so that mono black decks still have some trouble getting rid of Sanji and Pudding, or the other cards that can come out next to it. And as we don't have very good red control decks, being able to affect the power of it doesn't actually matter much until it's rested, which means it's already done its job multiple turns in a row. It's due to this consistency and power that it suddenly exploded out of nowhere despite no one talking about it before EB02 came out. Another key card that works exceptionally well with this deck is the new 6-cost Secret Rare Luffy. This Luffy is a 6-cost 7000 rush, which on paper doesn't seem that crazy when we have things like Kid and Killer, which is a 4-cost 7000 rush. However, thanks to your leader ability, it's minimum a 4-cost 7000 rush because you get 2 of the Dong back active, and for any Sanji and Puddings that you have on the board, it only gets stronger and stronger. This Luffy's interesting gimmick is that he can return active Dong to make himself active. Now, this is the first card that we've ever had that is forcing you to return active Dong, but if it could return rested Dong, this leader would just be completely broken. This deck generally wants to play the 4-cost Sorojuro on 4 Dong, and then on 6 Dong, start using its leader ability with Sanji and Pudding. Now, once you play Sanji and Pudding on 6 Dong and use your leader effect, you have 4 Dong left, which means you can play another Zorojuro. In this way, on this early turn, not only have you had 3 things on the board, 2 of them searching your new card, but you have a 6,000 power line, a 7,000 power line, and another 6,000 power line that are ready to attack from the next turn. Once you establish your board through multiple Zorojuros and 5-cost Sanji and Puddings, then you could start to try to close out the game. And the best card to do this, of course, is the 6-cost Luffy. Due to the fact that you have your leader ability as well as its ability to attack twice, you can easily hit at crazy numbers like 15,000 twice when you're trying to go for lethal. Not only this, but because it also has access to green, it has access to things like the 4-cost Zoro, which can help you take the board in the early game, 3-cost Electrical Luna, which is very good for the mirror and other aggressive decks that are trying to beat you, and even another tech card that some people use, the 2-cost 9-sword Ashura Demon Slayer whatever card. By not only having ways that you can negate the opponent's aggression, but also be able to create your own aggression, it's a very anti-aggro deck, making it part of the reason why Blue Doflamingo has fallen in favor in Japan since EB02. Talking about some more niche cards that you won't see in every deck, let's start with one that a lot of people thought would be in the deck at the beginning, the 7-cost Luffy or the 7-cost Luffy title in purple. Now these cards can be and still are very good within this list due to the fact that Green Purple Luffy wants to spread his board very quickly. However, due to the fact that it's 7 cost, it means that if you're minusing your Dome from a very early stage, you sometimes don't reach 7 costs in time. As such, if you do see these cards, you generally see them only at 2 counts. Nonetheless, things like the 7-cost Luffy title being able to play the 5-cost Sanji and Pudding can be very powerful, especially in the mirror when you're just trying to create each other's board. One card that I want to talk about in particular that I think is really good that was used in the 2nd place list in the Japan Finals by Yashamaru is the 6-cost Brook. Now, the 6-cost Brook you may have seen, or I may have introduced it to you through Red Purple Luffy. And I think that it's very good in Red Purple Luffy, but it's also exceptionally good in Green Purple Luffy due to the fact that you see so many mirrors. Now, I always thought this was a pretty good card, but it's even better now that we have Green Purple Luffy in the meta. Especially in the mirror, a lot of it is how you deal with the opponent's board. And the insight a lot of people have come up with is the 3-cost Electrical Luna to be able to lock the opponent's board while you are still being on the aggressive side. The 6-cost Brook doesn't lock the opponent's board, but instead it makes it very easy for you to take back the opponent's board. In tandem with cards such as Thunder Bagua, you can make your defenses higher while also being able to take the opponent's board back and still not lose your maximum Dong, which is still very valuable to this deck. A lot of these tech cards that you see, like the Demon Ashura event, are ways that people have been trying to deal with the mirror as it's so prevalent in EB02. This Ashura event in particular is really good within this deck specifically because of the stage. Because the stage can give one of your characters +2 cost, you can give your 1-cost Nami that's been sitting on the board since turn 1 +2 cost to make it 3 cost to give yourself a target for the Ashura event. These random green cards that have been printed over half a year ago are suddenly coming into play because we finally have a good aggressive green deck. While many of the cards in this deck are purple, the green package is really crucial to being able to slow down the opponent's movement to make it so that you can keep doing your powerful move. Other than this, you see things like the 3-cost Sorojuro or the 3-cost Frankie in lists here and there to be able to help you regain the Dong that you're losing from your leader effect, but not every list runs this due to the fact that they feel like the 5-cost Sanjin Pudding is enough. Now, all of these strengths came together in a Japan Finals with 9 people using Green Purple Luffy in the top 16, 4 people using Blue Doflamingo, 2 people using Black Teach, and 1 person using Red Green Smoker. Now, looking at this, it seems like Green Purple Luffy is by far the best deck in EB02, and while this may be true, I do think that there's a lot of things that can beat it, and I want to convince you at the end of this video on how that might be possible. And the first list that I want to talk about in doing so is Red Green Smoker, who ended up winning the Japan Finals despite being the only person to bring the deck in the entire tournament. Now, this Red Green Smoker player played a very interesting list, playing a very control-oriented version, focusing on the 8-cost Kid plan that Bonney is known for. But my question when I saw him playing is, why not play Bonney? Obviously, because you have 4 life and you don't have the Bonney leader effect, it seems like you'd be a lot more fragile. However, I realized that it's because it's not only the 8-cost Kid that helps you win against these meta matchups. While yes, 8-cost Kid alone can be very good into things like Green Purple Luffy, it's not necessarily enough to fight into the other random meta decks that you may hit, like Black Lucci or Black Teach. Smoker has a lot of interesting tools, like the 5-cost Smoker as well as his leader effect. The 5-cost Smoker is a 5-cost 7000 card with Banish that has the activate main to be able to restand one of your Dong. With your leader effect, you can restand 3 Dong, which is very good because you want to be playing the 3-cost Tashigi. By playing things like the 3-cost Tashigi and the 2-cost Roshinante, you can make a very powerful board that can defend each other while still hitting at very annoying powerful thresholds thanks to the leader ability as well as the 5-cost Smoker. In this way, Red Green Smoker is a very aggressive and defensive deck at the same time, and as it runs 8-cost Kid, it's very good into things such as Green Purple Luffy. As such, we can see on the game day he beat all of the Green Purple Luffys in the massive wave of Green Purple Luffys that he fought on the day. 8-cost Kid decks are just one of the ways that you can beat this deck, and on this day I think it was proven that perhaps the meta hadn't evolved enough to be able to give these decks time to come out. This deck also used some other interesting cards that you're not used to seeing in Red Green Smokers, such as the 2-cost Monet and the 7-cost Ben Beckman. Now Ben Beckman can trash a 6000 power, but if you can minus 1000 power to a target, you can very easily get rid of the 5-cost Tanjin Pudding, regardless of if their cost has been raised. As such, with this combo, as well as things such as 8-cost Kid, not only are you creating your own powerful board that's 7000 power or higher for your leader ability, but you're also creating a board that the opponent can't deal with, due to the fact that the opponent has such a high stallion that they're forced to hit into in the 8-cost Kid. It's thanks to this leader ability from Red Green Smoker that restands your Dong that not only are you really good at making a defensive 8-cost Kid plan for being able to attach Dong onto your 8-cost Kid or being able to leave up Dong for counter events, but also extremely aggressive because you can just immediately use these Dong the same way that Green Purple Luffy uses his Dong to play more characters or attach them to characters to hit at higher thresholds. But this isn't to say that Red Green Smoker is the only 8-cost Kid deck that's very good in this meta. Bonney, with her deck being focused around Supernovas, not only can search the 8-cost Kid, but also has access to the 5-cost Cavendish that Red Green Smoker doesn't have. This is a list by Raftera, who's a Bonney main from the Philippines. Now, he's been playing Bonney for as long as I can tell, and he's really cooked this list. While the deck, I believe, still functions on the 8-cost Kid, you have lots of other tools like the 9-cost Shanks, 10-cost Doflamingo, and the 7-cost Hody to be able to deal with other decks within the meta. This deck also runs the 5-cost Smoker, but due to the fact that there's so many counterless cards already in the deck, it's hard to justify running 4 like Smoker does. However, this card still is really good in Bonney because this 1 extra Dome that you get from Smoker can easily be used for your leader ability as well. If you're looking for a deck that plays purely around 8-cost Kid, I believe that this deck is probably better. You do see some things like 6-cost Hawkins being taken out due to the fact that we haven't seen that many mono black decks within the meta recently. Even these mono black decks can start to struggle when you get things like the 3-cost Tashigi on the board, so for this reason and counterless issues, the card has started to fall out of favor. Raftera in many versions of his list has run the 3-cost Raizel, and while I personally can't really find the timing that I really want to be playing or using this Raizel, if you can hide him behind the 8-cost Kid wall, then he continuously keeps drawing you extra cards per turn while attacking. I think that 8-cost Kid decks are a very good answer to Green Purple Luffy, and it just depends on what other decks you feel like you might end up hitting to choose what you end up wanting to play. Although we haven't seen it much, things like Green Uta or Green Yellow Law could still be good within this meta due to the fact that they have very different strengths in being able to be aggressive or being able to draw multiple cards per turn and search things like 9-cost Shanks. But this isn't to say that 8-cost Kid decks are the only types of decks that can beat Green Purple Luffy. Actually, Green Purple Luffy can be exploited by a lot of decks. Another type of deck that's very good into Green Purple Luffy are removal decks in Black Lucci or Black Smoker. We actually saw a lot of Black Lucci within the Japan finals, but none of them made it into the top cut. However, I think that it was quite a big misread by the players to not play Black Smoker. I personally think that Black Smoker is better than Black Lucci, that has a very similar matchup spread, but has a lot more consistency due to the fact that it runs the Navy package and not the CP package. While Black Lucci has extremely explosive turns in the 8-cost Moria into Rebecca, Spandam, Spandine, Lucci, due to his leader effect dropping 2 cards in his trash, he can just as easily never draw his Morias. As Smoker has things such as the 1-cost Sengoku now to be able to cycle through his deck, he can look for Morias better than someone like Lucci can, while still having similar power due to the fact that he has access to things such as the 5-cost Tashigi as well. It's thanks to this 5-cost Tashigi that Smoker has a better Blackbeard matchup than someone like Lucci has, which is why I think that it's personally better than Lucci in the current meta. Not only this, but because Ice Age is also searchable, I think in general the deck is very solid, and I feel like it's a bit of a misread by people to not bring the deck. If you can find an Ice Age early, it's very easy to be able to clear the opponent's 5-cost Tanjin Pudding, even if it becomes 7-cost with the stage. And as such, if you can just remove a couple of these cards to slow down the pace of the game and eventually answer the opponent with your own Moria, then you can start to push back and create a lot more pressure. pressure. While the matchup is slightly winning for Smoker and Lucci, I believe that it's a very fine line to toe because GP Luffy has so much consistency, whereas Smoker and Lucci really need to draw the cards that they need early or else they will start to get run over very quickly. Both of these decks are viable Green Purple Luffy counters, but as we discussed with the 8-cost Kid decks, it really depends on the other decks that you might end up hitting, such as Blue Doflamingo, Black Teach, or the random Black Yellow Luffy here and there. Now, if people are playing a lot of 8-cost Kid decks to deal with Green Purple Luffy, then these mono black decks are a lot stronger because they're also good into 8-cost Kid decks. In this way, I think that if the meta just had a little bit more time to sort of ruminate, then a lot of people would be able to find interesting ways to deal with the meta and eventually make a very dynamic meta that can keep cycling. As EB02 was so short, we ended up only having Green Purple Luffy being the dominant deck throughout without many people being able to cook up answers within the right amount of time. As such, I hope that you as the viewer can actually figure out these counters that we couldn't. We've so far talked about 2 different ways that you can defend against Green Purple Luffy in either making your leader a high enough power that it slows down the game to the point that you can win back, and being able to clear the opponent's board so that they just don't have the ability to be able to push you down fast enough. However, I think that there's one other type of deck that's really good into Green Purple Luffy, and that is decks that can hit really tall. Now, decks that can hit wide are decks such as Green Purple Luffy and Blue Doflamingo, who spread out their characters and hit at annoying 5, 6, 7,000 power thresholds throughout the game. Decks that hit tall are decks such as Red Purple Luffy, who hit at very high thresholds like 9, 10, 11,000 throughout the game, to make it so that the opponent, although they don't have to counter as many attacks, needs to counter much higher power attacks. Green Purple Luffy as a deck does not run very much counter. Referring back to the standard list, it has things like Gum Gum Giant as well as blockers in the 3-cost Robin, but that's really about it. And if you can keep hitting the opponent at very high thresholds thanks to things such as the 8-cost Dragon, 9-cost Luffy, or 10-cost Shanks, or 10-cost Nika, it really becomes difficult for the opponent to be able to stabilize and get to a point where they actually can push you down. And as Red Purple Luffy also has defensive capabilities in his deck such as Gum Gum Giant, it makes it difficult for the Green Purple Luffy to just try to overrun him with things such as the 6-cost Luffy into a massive double swing. Especially towards the beginning of EB02, there were lots of Red Purple Luffys within the meta to just counter Green Purple Luffy, although they did start to come down as more 8-cost Kid decks came into the meta. Within this Green Purple Luffy infested meta especially, I think things like the 6-cost Brook and Red Purple Luffy are very good, although active players at the time weren't actually using it. I wasn't actually using Red Purple Luffy at this time just because I had another deck which I'll talk about at the end of this video. However, it is ironic that in the one timing where Red Purple Luffy was seeming to be more meta than it ever has been before, I wasn't actually playing it. Speaking of decks that can hit tall, it's not just Red Purple Luffy that can do this. There's also the Western Boogeyman Black Yellow Luffy. Black Yellow Luffy is a deck that's very interesting in Japan because although it may potentially be strong, due to things like Teach existing in the meta, people just end up not really wanting to play it. People are still deathly afraid of playing things that would be countered by Teach in the event that you end up hitting them. As such, although Black Yellow Luffy has a very good matchup into Green Purple Luffy due to the fact that it keeps hitting very high with things like the 5-cost Luffy being able to hit for 8,000 and the leader hitting for 11,000 every single turn, while his leader is 9,000 power, similar to the way that 8-cost Kid wants to play, we just haven't really seen it that much. The last 2 decks that I want to talk about in the EB02 meta are decks that are really good, but have one certain thing holding them back. The first deck is one that people thought was going to be the undisputed best deck in the format, Yellow Enel. What happened to Yellow Enel? Well, Yellow Enel, first of all, got the 10-cost Enel, and this 10-cost Enel is everything that he wanted to have. On attack, he can gain life, and as it's on attack and has a rush, it can bypass things like Teach that negates on-play effects. You'd think that it's the perfect Black Teach counter. However, the reason why we don't see this card is because despite having the perfect Teach counter card, it still is not enough to beat Teach. If this matchup was any better, I think that we'd see so many Enels in the middle. But due to the fact that Teach is so prevalent throughout all of Japan since OB09, it's really difficult to justify bringing a deck like Enel that, although it may have a good Blue Doflamingo matchup and an okay Green Purple Luffy matchup, it ends up folding to a lot of the counters of Green Purple Luffy as well. I do think, though, that if in the West there's less Black Teach, then this deck could be a lot more prevalent than it is in Japan. The second deck, and the one that I ended up playing throughout most of EB02, is Vegapunk. Now, I promise that Vegapunk is not a cope deck. 5-cost Vegapunk was introduced in EB02, and this Vegapunk card, although it seems like a very control-y card, is actually an amazing aggro tool. While people thought that it would just be a very good Quasar target, it's much more than that. Because aggro Vegapunk tries to teeter on the line of life and death while trying to create a board that's as aggressive as possible, having more blockers that don't need to rest themselves are exceptionally powerful within this deck. As the 5-cost Vegapunk can play any scientist from the top 5 of your deck, having all of these aggressive tools that can easily be searched and played not only increase the consistency of your deck, but also make it so that your deck is much powerful as a whole package. Towards the end of EB02, we had a Vegapunk player make it all the way to the top 4 in the 3v3 Winter Cup, with Vegapunk with a record of 10-1. This deck really only has a bad much of it into yellow Enel as well as green purple Luffy, so especially in these 3v3 formats, I think that Vegapunk is an exceptionally powerful deck. Due to Vegapunk's leader ability allowing him to play egghead characters straight to the board, it's very easy for him to swarm the entire board and keep hitting the opponent at thresholds that are really annoying to deal with. If the opponent can't stabilize within time, the game is over within 5 or 6 turns, and if they can stabilize, Vegapunk still has a lot of defensive tools because he can also send the cards to his life. With cards such as the 3-cost Didishi or the 3-cost Bonney, we also have lots of different ways to keep our hand healthy while we're trying to keep up our pressure. In this way, although it may seem like we may run out of resources very quickly, if we manage our resources very carefully and attack and counter only when we need to, it's very easy to run over an opponent who just doesn't really know what Vegapunk has the potential to do. As such, Vegapunk, thanks to this 5-cost Vegapunk, not only makes the deck much more tanky, but also much more consistent, making this deck very difficult, but also extremely powerful and fun. Though on the surface it seems like EB02 is a stale meta, I think it's actually open to a lot of deck building. I call upon you, the viewer, who still has the set ahead of you, to try to find the eye in this green and purple storm. Is Green Purple Luffy like a sakura tree that'll fade away within a week? Or is Green Purple Luffy like a matsu tree that'll stay strong even in the winter for thousands of years? Thank you to OPTCG Decks for sponsoring this video. If you guys found it useful, make sure to check it out and make sure to use my promo code KAI, all caps KAI, to let them know that I sent you. Until next time, I've been iKailaKai. Thank you for watching, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.